Last weekend, we saw an enraged mob violently shut down an opposing voice, Posey Parker, and the Let Women Speak event. We then saw the cancellation of the second Let Women Speak event in Wellington due to safety concerns. As a result, I turned to open source intelligence to attempt to identify any evidence of motivating ideologies behind the coordination and execution of the counter-protest. What I found was an extremely interesting, although unsurprising, find. I'm Phil, and this is the Intelligence Report.
That is your chance to be ruthless.
This document, titled Swerf and Turf, the Red-Brown Alliance in Policing Gender, was published on March 24, 2023, and posted on a Facebook group involved with supporting the LGBTQIA+ counter-protests to Posey Parker's Let Women Speak events. The article itself states its support for the LGBTQIA+ counter-protests. It reads, "We wholeheartedly endorse actions for trans rights this weekend in Auckland and Wellington." Now, I will let the author introduce herself from this podcast titled The Red-Brown Zombie Plague, How Fascist Ideas Are Becoming Popular on the Left, with Daphne Lawless.
Kia ora koutou katoa. As you've heard, my name's Daphne. I'm a descendant of white settlers living in Tamaki Makaurau, the city commonly known as Auckland, in Aotearoa, commonly known as New Zealand. I've been involved in revolutionary politics in a formal level for about 20 years now. I write for the website and magazine fightback.org.nz.
The article begins, "We reprint it in light of Aotearoa New Zealand's national controversy over the speaking tour of Nazi-aligned TERF Posey Parker." Most of this article was actually made up of an older article published in 2019. But this community saw it necessary to republish and distribute it prior to the arrival of Posey Parker in New Zealand. The red in the title of the article refers to leftists or communists, and the brown refers to fascists. From the title, we can already get an idea of where this article is going to go: an alignment of communism and fascism. The article's intended audience is those on the radical left, and the purpose is to warn the reader about the dangers and ease in which the left themselves can convert to fascism. The article therefore serves as a warning to the reader. You must adhere to the approved doctrines, lest the opposition's ideas persuade you to depart from the socialist movement. The author begins the article with two examples to illustrate previous leftists that departed from the left's approved narrative. She writes, "Late last year, 2018, a veteran of communist politics in New Zealand decided to contribute to a march for the traditional working class demand for reproductive rights by standing outside it with a sign bearing only the words, 'Woman equals adult human female,' a dog whistle for anti-trans feminists or trans-excluding radical feminists, TERFs." The second example, another veteran from the same organisation now has the same phrase, "Woman equals adult human female," at the head of her Twitter biography, displacing all mention of her record as a socialist and a union organiser. Here the author is setting up two cases of which she will argue is unacceptable behaviour exhibited by socialists. That is, taking the side of Posey Parker. The author will spend the rest of the article making the argument that when the left allows the free speech of the countering position, i.e. Posey Parker's position on gender issues, it is not only allowing fascism to exist, but that allowing free speech has the danger of converting the left to the opposing side of the argument. She writes, "How has the motivation to punch down on trans people and defend the free speech of fascists and others who do so come to substitute for the fight for workers' power and a post-capitalist world in the minds of the veteran activists?" Here the author implies that to not stand for the ideals of the trans movement is to no longer be fighting against capitalism. The author suggests that defending free speech has become a substitute struggle, and because of this, these veteran activists have lost their way. However, it rather seems that the author has departed from classical Marxism and has taken up cultural Marxism, also known as critical theory, and in this case, critical queer theory. The author continues to outline just how dangerous free speech is for the radical left, so much so that it seems to be an existential threat to socialism itself. She writes, "Free speech absolutism on the left has had a historical record of degenerating, first into tolerance for right-wing ideas, then actual sympathy with them." Did she really just say that? In an environment of free speech, the radical left actually moves more centre and maybe even right? No wonder they want to censor free speech. They wouldn't have anyone left. Jokes aside, this most likely gives us a pretty good indication as to why the left has moved from a pro-free speech position to what we saw occur on the weekend, where a mob saw it necessary to use violence to censor an opposing view. If the opposing view is allowed to be expressed in the public domain, we may start to see a shift in the social norms, and some people do not like that. The author also takes aim at socialist feminist academic Nina Powers. She accuses Nina Powers of becoming transphobic and using fascistic memes, and is not impressed with Nina Powers' invocation of free speech to depart from the party line. But Nina Powers' position actually seems reasonable, in that it doesn't sound far right at all. Have a listen.
But honestly, I wanted to keep that first line as it is, men and women exist, in its sort of stupid simplicity, precisely because even that claim has become contentious. You could say, oh, but aren't there other kinds of people other than men and women? What about non-binary people? Or, is being male or being female some immutable essence? And if you talk about essences, aren't you reducing people to their biological capacity? I mean, of course you're not. You're not saying anything about what people can do, have to do with it. You're not for a second saying that, because you're a man, you have to do X or Y. Because you're a woman, you have to do it. But I think it's manifestly clear that the kind of attempt to pretend that sexual difference doesn't matter in all situations is a mistake. It's not true. It does matter, very obviously, in quite a lot of situations. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't therefore treat men and women equally, but there might be some differences in that equality, and equality is a very complicated question as well. And I don't think all inequalities are bad. You can have positive inequality as well, and we can talk about difference being actually very beautiful. In some contexts, being weak is beautiful. In some contexts, being strong is beautiful. These are opposites, but we don't tend to essentialize them. All the time. So anyway, the discussion has become very stupid in the public discourse, but also very irate and angry.
A key point to note is that in this article, almost any deviation from the official left-wing position is considered fascist. This is an extremely unsophisticated and misleading use of the term. Consider this. The author writes, analysing turf politics as a variety of fascist ideology might seem shocking or over the top, particularly because to do so would require us to categorise many veteran socialists in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to have slipped over into the red-brown camp. But defining fascism as a movement in defence of the threatened privilege of the downwardly mobile middle class seems to make the parallel unavoidable. This section of the article is black and white. The radical left considers anyone holding turf political positions to be a fascist. Even classical Marxists concerned with economic class struggle are classed as fascists. It's no wonder they can throw terms around such as fascism with such ease. Their definitions are clearly not even close to reality. Look at how they just define fascism: as a movement in defence of the threatened privilege of the downwardly mobile middle class. That is not even remotely close. So if free speech is such a problem, what stops this socialist movement tearing itself apart? Well, the author's solution is to ensure that free speech is not tolerated. She writes, "To fight fascism, we must have a united front of working and oppressed people. To have a united front, we cannot tolerate racism, misogyny, transphobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, state worship, or any other ideology which suggests that some oppressed people are deserving targets within our united front, because that is literally the thin edge of the fascist wedge." This list of intolerances sounds remarkably familiar.
There is a river of anti-Semitism. There is a river of Islamophobia. I would say, Madam Speaker, that there is a river of genuine fascism.
The author continues, "We need to hold to a practice of sharp criticism of swerf and turf ideas wherever they are raised, even by comrades or good leftists. As contrary to the unity of all the oppressed, we need to build a better world. And at the same time, it is crucial to build the biggest possible anti-fascist, anti-capitalist united front, which will mean sometimes linking arms with swerfs and turfs, even partisans of Bashar al-Assad against a common enemy. No one said it was going to be easy." The violence perpetrated by the counter-protesters was not unexpected. When this community's central doctrines use rhetoric such as allies and enemies and oppressors and oppressed, and when dissent from those doctrines is not tolerated, it becomes cult-like. This tribal totalitarian ideology of grievance politics is actually becoming repressive, like we saw on the weekend. It is not bringing us together through open debate, but is dividing us apart and putting us against each other. In a podcast, the article's author suggests just how easy it is for the left to become actual fascists. Have a listen.
The red-brown phenomenon is not a new one. It goes all the way back to, let's face it, who was the editor of the Italian Socialist Party magazine in 1915? The answer to that is Benito Mussolini. There has always been a fringe of socialist or social democratic politics who have been sympathetic to fascist ideas, and that is because there's a lack of a strong dividing line between the two.
We have seen here that the author is concerned that the left will turn to fascism. She acknowledges that it is the historical precedent. Now we are seeing politically motivated violence in order to shut down opposing voices. My advice is study Benito Mussolini, the father of fascism. Study him so you can recognize what actual fascism really looks like, and keep talking about these issues. I'm Phil, and this has been The Intelligence Report.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My fantasy chance to be